Ross, thank you so much for having us. It's a long way from where you began down here. Does it feel like a lifetime ago from your time at Falkirk?
Career-wise, everything seems to have gone really fast. I think maybe part of the reason for that is the early part of my career was in my hometown club in Falkirk. It was a hugely successful period for the club. The manager at the time, John Hughes, was achieving some outstanding results, and it was brilliant to be a part of that. But I've got to say that, apart from working 7 days a week, which it felt, particularly in the work that we did in setting up the academy there, it never really felt like a job. So probably the first 6 years of my career felt like something that I got paid for it, obviously, but it felt like I was just doing my hobby all the time at the club that I'd grew up around, the hometown club, and going in there every day felt like a privilege rather than a job. So yeah, it's a long way geographically, Southampton from Falkirk, of course, but now the career seems like it's gone very fast. So I wouldn't quite say a lifetime, not yet anyway.
You mentioned working with John Hughes there, of course. What was it? It's a huge personality in Scottish football. What was it like starting out alongside John?
Just unbelievable. I think because at the time, as I say, it felt like a hobby for me, and it was just a wonderful place to be at the time because we were so successful in relative terms for the club. We were playing one promotion, playing in cup finals, playing in semi-finals, playing in Europe. The academy became so synonymous with the success of the club. We had so many good players, the recruitment had went so well, and at the time it just felt like a great privilege to be part of that. And I probably at the time didn't quite appreciate how good John was for me, because I didn't come from a playing background at the time, and he effectively, alongside the chief executive George Craig, gave me my chance in the game, if you like, and they were just unbelievable to me. The opportunities that he afforded me, Yogi, were unbelievable. So being in the dressing room before every game, half time, full time, around him, whether it was the scouting side, whether it was the contracts, whatever we were doing, just it was literally access all areas, and probably I hope I earned the right to be part of his team at the time. And the one thing he demanded was absolute hard work, and hopefully that's one thing that he, as well as my parents, I hope, installed in me. And working with him was madness a lot of the time, great fun, but more importantly we had great success at Falkirk at the time, and so much of that's down to him.
And that seemed like a great grounding for you, and a great place to start as well, to sort of propel your career to where you are now. Aye,
without a doubt, it's probably the best grounding that I could ever hope for. I think I've always said I've worked in 4 football clubs in 15 years. I don't think I could have done the job I did at Watford without what I did at Falkirk. And equally, I don't think I could have done the Huddersfield Town job without the experiences at both Falkirk and at Watford. And then here, hopefully all of those experiences have come together to help me to work in a club of this size and stature. But the grounding at Falkirk was so special because the club's much smaller than the other clubs I've worked at before. We were really ambitious at the time in developing the academy, developing the training ground, building out our sports science, our medicine, our recruitment. Everything that we put into that club got the results that it got, but I got to experience almost every facet of the club, certainly on the football side, and because of how open George Craig, the chief executive, was at the time, you certainly got to experience all the other areas as well. So in terms of a grounding, it was absolutely magnificent, and something that certainly wasn't by design, but something I'm so appreciative of.
And you said yourself there, it was something that you probably didn't really appreciate at the time. Once you're in that moment, you kind of you go along with it, and it kind of builds from there, I suppose, in a way.
There's no doubt about that, especially when you work with somebody like John Hughes. You never had any time to really reflect on what you were doing, because he was so successful there at the club, and he's been successful, in other clubs he's worked at as well. And his drive, his intensity, and how much work, fundamentally, just how much work you've got to put into the thing, meant that there was no time to ever really reflect. It was just from one thing to the next thing all the time, and I can't talk highly enough of him and that experience and everything that I gained from that for the rest of my career so far.
There seems to be a lot of pride in you from your roots at Falkirk and where you began. I think that really comes across.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm proud to be Scottish for a start. So I'm proud that I started in Scottish football. I'm proud that Falkirk, during our period there, I think it's down on record as the most successful period in the club's history in terms of playing in the top league for consecutive seasons, and all the work that we did in the academy. I'm incredibly proud of that, and probably more so because it's my hometown club. But certainly, it's certainly something I'm proud of, no doubt.
You're only 35, you've risen through the ranks at quite a pace in terms of football operations. That must have involved a really strong support network and a lot of self-belief as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. I think you've got to believe in what you do. And as you go through the levels in football, there'll be various tests come your way, and you've certainly got to rise to those challenges. I think I've always been incredibly fortunate to be surrounded by really good people wherever I've been. I've mentioned those people already at Falkirk. The other two I should mention from Falkirk would be Brian Rice, who was John Hughes' assistant, the manager at Hamilton now. He was very similar to John in that he was so open to give you everything that he had at the time, and Brian and I are still great friends now. When I went to Watford, I took him with me. He came there in a chief scout capacity, so he was somebody that had a great playing career, a wonderful coach, and was a great support to me. And then the legendary figure of Alex Smith at Falkirk as well was somebody that, I think he's managed every national team in Scotland apart from the full team, from the B team down, and to have somebody like him that I can now call a friend. He's living in Australia now. We speak every now and again on the phone. We used to speak every day when I was in England, and he was still at Falkirk. And to have people with that experience around you then, it's kind of continued throughout my career. When I went to Watford, Graham Taylor was my chairman. I mean, you can't get a better figure in English football than what Graham Taylor was for me, and the support he gave me probably also helped to build that self-belief in the job. When somebody like him's telling you, how well you're doing or how well you can do, that was almost like a big seal of approval to work with somebody who'd been the former England manager and the most successful Watford manager of all time. So there's been a lot of figures like that through my career for sure that help with that support network. And even now, whether it's the support network above me or the staff that I lead on a day-to-day basis, I'm proud to lead the staff that I lead here. We've got wonderful staff around me all the time, and you certainly couldn't do a job at this club's got just over 400 people in it. And the people that I'm working with every day inspire me, and hopefully I can inspire them as well.
Yeah, going back to Falkirk, you had the opportunity to join Celtic after Falkirk, and rejecting that again, what did it take for you to reject a move like that and stay focused on what I would think was a career down south, which was what you ultimately wanted to do?
I think that's probably when I said earlier that I never realised that I was working. It felt like a hobby at the time because we were just going from one thing to the next thing at Falkirk, and it was just something I loved. That was probably the moment when I had an opportunity to go elsewhere, when I realised that it was a bit more than that. It was a bit serious. But I think it would be true to say that at that moment in time, when I began to really understand what I wanted from my career and where I wanted to go in my career, I think it is true that at that moment in time, I saw an opportunity in England as what I would want to pursue at that time. And whatever clubs offer you opportunities, you've got to be grateful for them at any moment in time, especially clubs the size of Celtic, of course.
What comes into play at that point for you in terms of staying focused and being sort of mentally prepared to continue down the path that you want to continue on, or indeed receive the criticism that you might have received at the time for not going a certain way? Yes,
I think you've certainly got to be single-minded. I've got to be honest. The thing that I always find really difficult in a career decision for yourself is I can find it really difficult to be single-minded at times, because you could feel like you're letting other people down, and then you start to overthink things at times, and you can think, am I going to let down the people that's offered me this opportunity, or am I going to let down the people that I might leave behind? So that can be a real wrestle in your mind. But ultimately, you're right in what you say, that any decisions that I've made in my career so far have worked out well. I'm pleased to say, but I think they've worked out well because I've chosen good opportunities in fantastic clubs in the right moments, and I've also got to say that I've also rejected some other opportunities at unbelievably good clubs. And maybe that was just the wrong moment for me at that time, but the ones I've taken have thankfully gone well for me. But it's certainly linked to my career plan, but they're never easy decisions.
Obviously, in your role, the links with Celtic continued with the moves of Fraser Forster, Victor Wanyama, Virgil van Dijk, and more recently Stuart Armstrong south of the border. Do you feel a lot of pressure on you when you identify these talents and for them to come down and do well? Does that affect you?
So what I would say there is the scouting and recruitment. I'm never a fan of people who claim that they've signed Virgil van Dijk, for example. I think what we've built here at Southampton is a huge team effort, and what I lead here is a brilliant team. Many of the people that's part of our team in scouting have been here almost 10 years. They all know their jobs inside out. We've got wonderful people work for us, so first and foremost it's a team effort. I think you can find it difficult at times when, of course, we've been really, really successful in the transfer market, and along the way some of them will go wrong. Some of them won't be right, some of them won't be successful. So of course it's difficult when you're criticised for 1 or 2, 3 or 4, 5 or 6 even. Of course you'll be criticised for some. That's the nature of the game, and I think you've just got to accept that as well as receiving praise along the way, you'll receive some criticism. Nobody likes to be criticised, but it's part and parcel of the game that we're in, and I don't see it as a pressure, certainly not. But what I'm always conscious of is making sure that the recognition for any success that we've got here is a team effort, and along the way, if anything goes wrong, that's a team effort as well. But we stick to our plan, and we try and stay really, really focused to that.
I think that's key in any career as well. Though people are open to criticism, and it's building up that resilience, isn't it? And that kind of becomes part of who you are going forward, and your success really too. Yeah,
I think resilience is a huge thing. We speak about it whether it's our academy players or our first team players or whatever club it is you're playing in. You've got to have a degree of resilience to handle the fact that we work in jobs that other people want to comment on every day. And that's the nature of working in a job that's got any degree of public profile to it or any degree of scrutiny to it. But resilience is a key word, and you've certainly got to develop that. You've certainly got to develop it over time, and I think I have been incredibly fortunate, going back to the very start, that at Falkirk I maybe developed some of that without even realising I was developing it, because it just felt like something that I just loved at the same time. And at that point I'm sure people were commenting on me at that time, and I probably was oblivious to it. As you move along your career, you become more aware that people are commenting positively and negatively on your work. But yeah, you just got to stick to your plan, stay resilient and stay positive with all your people.
And you said earlier there was other opportunities for you to move to other clubs more recently. It was a move to Rangers that you rejected. How tough a decision was that for you to make in that moment? Yeah,
significantly. Yeah, I think I touched on it earlier again when I was referencing when you might disappoint some other people. I think that would probably be what I was referring to there, because that's a club that's got some wonderful people connected to it that are personal friends of mine, people that I've got a really strong connection to. So yeah, it was a difficult decision, but ultimately the job that I've got here, and the same job that I had in that period when that opportunity came around, is a wonderful job, and it was very, very difficult to leave this job and leave the people behind here. I lead some outstanding staff every day here, and they're so committed to the club. They give me incredible commitment personally, and that would have been difficult to leave them, but it was incredibly difficult to say no to some people that I've got huge respect for, and not just in Scottish football but in football generally.
A key part of your roles so far in your career has been working with the young players. How important is it to nurture those young players, especially if they're moving away from home, the support of their friends and their family? How key a role do the club have in terms of ensuring the welfare side of young players?
Yeah, it's critical. So right back to Falkirk, we had that's almost how I started in the game, if you like, where the first opportunity I had for the first year at Falkirk was working on setting up an education and welfare provision for young players at Falkirk. Was my first key role there. The club was taking the academy really, really seriously. It went on to become one of the best academies in Scotland, but the foundation of that academy was built on making sure we look after these young lads that were coming into the club, on everything other than football, because we knew the football bit we could look after. We had some fantastic coaches there at the time. Eddie May leading the coaching side in the academy. We had some brilliant people doing that, and what we had to build was that welfare provision to make sure that everybody was well looked after. And you're right, that's continued throughout my career. When I got here, we began to place a lot of focus on how we can be quite aggressive in the marketplace around some 16, 17-year-olds. We're really fortunate today here that Jan Valery, a young French player that we signed 3 years ago as part of that strategy, is playing in our first team as a first team regular now at 19 years of age. And I've got no doubt that our scouting and recruitment around him was excellent when he was 16. Our coaching and development pathway has been excellent for the last 3 years to make him ready. But the people that have worked around that to make sure that he's settled into this area, that he could learn English, that he had no fears, no worries, and moving from Rennes in France over here to Southampton, that everything was looked after so well for him. And there's so many people in this club can deserve credit for his pathway to our first team in recent times, but none more so than the people that have looked after him on the pitch.
I guess as well, the interesting thing is the challenges that are faced by footballers, regardless of the level that they're playing at. The pressure and the expectation on a human level, it's always there. It's always the same, really.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's grown even more in recent times with the growing emergence of social media in people's life, where not only do they face the pressure when they're playing on the pitch, or if you're a football executive when you're at the games or bumping into people around the stadium and things like that. Not only have you got that pressure, everybody's always had the pressure of the media commenting and on the news and the newspapers, wherever it may be, but people have now got people that can genuinely access their lives at any moment through social media. And I think that's something that everybody's got to be mindful of, whether you're somebody in the game, to make sure that you don't get so absorbed in that. But equally, there's a bit of a responsibility, I think, to the fans and the public to remember that these players and these staff members that work in football are human beings as well, and constantly feeding, whether it's positives or negatives, into people's lives can have different effects in people's lives. And we always have to be mindful of that, both as a society and people that work in the game.
I think, obviously you've touched on the social media side of things, and you can see, just in terms of football developing generally, sports science has taken off hugely, but in terms of the psychological side of football, how important, how key is it that that's addressed and that we get it right?
I think it's crucial. I think it's one of the biggest growth areas of professional football now. I think you rightly said there, sports science, for example, has grown massively in the last 10 years. Again, it was one of the first things we developed at Falkirk in partnership with the University of Stirling, and that's really, really well established inside football clubs now. And I think psychology is the next area that we've got to make sure we invest in strongly. We've got an excellent psychology team here at Southampton. That doesn't mean the team's complete and it's finished and what we've got is perfect, because it won't be. We've got people that do unbelievably good work, but we've got to make sure that as football generally, we continue to make investment in the right areas around the support that we can to young players, because I genuinely believe that the pressures on them are much greater today than they've ever been. I know that people on the streets probably then point that the contracts are probably higher than they've ever been as well, but for me that's irrelevant and can probably even enhance even more pressure onto young people in terms of how they deal with that. So the psychology side will grow, is growing, will grow, but it's something that we, certainly from any teams or clubs that I lead in that area, will always be mindful of for sure.
You've said in the past it's not just about a player when you're identifying somebody, but it's about their personality too. What sort of attributes do you look for in a player, or does it depend on the team or the club that will lend itself well?
No, I think character is really, really important. Clearly every club's got sets of values by which they work, or every organisation has, and they will select their employees according to what those values are. So here we are very, very big and very, very strong on ensuring that we try and get the character fits as well as we possibly can. Again, though all those won't work, but I would point, for example, today at our captain, Pierre Højbjerg. He's 23 years of age now. We signed him 3 years ago from Bayern Munich as a young player at 20, and one of the biggest reasons we signed him at that moment was we realised he was a leader in the making. We realised he was a strong character, but not only that, he carried himself wonderfully in terms of the respect that he gives everyone. This club's got so much heritage and history in its academy, and we want players in our first team that the young players can look up to and aspire towards. And although Pierre's only 23, he's the captain, and he's somebody that all our young players can look towards because of how well that man conducts himself. So it's certainly a big, big area for us when we're looking at our scouting and recruitment to make sure we get our characters right. We won't get them all right, but it's certainly so significant for us.
And I suppose part of that will be, the key part will be getting a blend of different types of personalities that can really bring the best out in terms of a team of each other as well. That would be a big part.
I think that's true. I think it's very true both on the pitch and off the pitch. So when we are, for example, when I sit on the board here, and we, all of the board, we all did a personality profiling thing together a couple of years ago. So whether you sit as a group of board directors, or you sit as a commercial team, or you sit as a scouting team, or you sit as a football team, I think it's really, really important to get that mix right. Sometimes you might not even understand what right looks like, but certainly having a mix of different characters is important. But ultimately what we always point towards is our values as a club, and making sure that we get people that we feel fit this club. And of course they might be people that wouldn't fit another club. But we feel that that's really, really important for us, both in our staff and in our players.
Now, rightly or wrongly, there can sometimes be a narrative around football players having an easy life due to the money and the lifestyle. But the flip side to that, I suppose, is how short-lived a footballer's career can be. How much preparation goes into life after football for the guys? Yeah,
so I think, so to take that question twofold, I think we've got to acknowledge that footballers do live a very privileged lifestyle. They're certainly paid more money now than they've ever been paid before. And most young lads, when I was at school, you want to grow up to be a professional footballer because we know that it is a privileged lifestyle, and the players themselves understand that, and they've got a duty to uphold that reputation in the public eye. There's no doubt about that, and I'm pleased and proud that our young players here do that exceptionally well. And again, right back to the start of Falkirk, it's something I point to there, that the young players there always conducted themselves immaculately and have gone on to represent Falkirk outstandingly well wherever they've been. Scotty Arfield, for example, wherever he's been in his career, he's represented those clubs outstandingly well based on that background that he had at Falkirk and from his family. So that's the first thing that's really, really important. But then the second part of your question, I think it is always really important that players have got an eye on what they do next. Clearly, the wealthier young players become, that might be more difficult for them to think about what they're going to do next, whether it's a business, whether it's coaching, whether it's management, whether it's something away from the game. But we certainly got a lot of emphasis here. The PFA are big in that as well, in terms of making players at least have an eye on what they want to do. A lot of players that want to be coaches in the future are starting the preparation for that earlier. Certainly in English football it feels like that anyway. I'm not sure what's going on in Scotland with that now, I'm probably out of touch with that. But certainly down here we can feel that there's players preparing themselves much earlier for what might come next, albeit I don't think you can have a strong career plan as a professional footballer, because your career can take so many different twists and turns, and so many different opportunities can present themselves that who knows what the future might hold.
In terms of support for players, how much work do you think there still needs to be done, or progress that has been made, depending on how you look at it? Judging by where you are just now, how well do you think that it's addressed just now in terms of support for these guys?
I think it's always really difficult to talk about what's going on generally in the game, because you're never sure exactly what each club is doing. What I can talk about is our club here at Southampton, and we've certainly got a robust department around all of our young players, but not just our young players, our established players as well, to make sure that we do everything we can to help them prepare, help them look after any issues they might have. Clearly you also rely on people asking for support at various times as well, and coming forward and seeking that support. I'm confident that what we've got is really, really strong, but it doesn't mean it's complete. We've always got to have our eye on what more can we do, what can we do next, and that's one of the big themes that we run this club by, that what more can we do all the time, whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch. We've always got to be mindful of it.
And the work here that we're doing with Back Onside as well is encouraging everyone to talk, no matter how difficult that might be. And I guess you've just touched on that yourself, and that's the key message, is for people to have the confidence to speak up and have somebody that they feel comfortable and confident to talk to.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think in football there's constant conversations going on that can almost always be about stuff linked to on the pitch, and you can almost get caught in that bubble naturally, because that's why we're all here. But we've got to make sure that people develop confidences with different people in the club, outside the club. But that would certainly be the key message that we would have any player or any staff member, that if there's a problem, speak up, whether it's to one of us in the club, whether it's to somebody outside the club, or even an external body that can help, because I think suffering in silence in the area of mental health can certainly only lead to further problems. And as a club, as a society, I think we've got a duty to look after people, but clearly we need people to speak up along the way.
And I guess as well, it's that sort of seeing other people doing it can often open you up to ideas or make you feel more comfortable. In terms of challenges that you've faced in your career, is there anything that you can think of that were particularly challenging times for you, and how you perhaps overcame them?
Oof, God, what a question that is. I wouldn't say there's been any huge challenges in my career. I think getting the balance right in your life of, everybody talks about work-life balance, which is almost impossible in football because we've got so much going on 24/7. But I think making sure that you can turn off the outside noise as much as you possibly can, so that you've not got so many influences and so many voices telling you where you're doing well and where you're doing wrong. I've got a really close circle of family and friends around me that I would trust implicitly, whether it's advice, whether it's to share things with, and turn off a lot of that noise, because I think that noise can be confusing for people, and I've probably developed that over time. I wouldn't say it's been a challenge, but it's certainly something that's been a self-awareness thing for me, that works for me, that to not listen too much to the outside noise, but to certainly have a lot of people that I respect strongly to ask their opinions or to receive opinions from them, rather than thinking that the whole world's got all the answers for you and want to tell you what to do every day in your life.
And I think one of the key messages as well is that we all have mental health, regardless if you're playing at the top of the Premier League or not. No one's exempt from needing support sometimes, or saying, I'm not doing too great, I need a chat.
Well, absolutely. I think that goes back to the speaking up point of view, and hopefully what I said there, I know that everybody's got different social circles, but hopefully everybody in the social circle can at least think of one person that if there was a mental health issue, if there was, or not even a mental health issue, just something they wanted to chat about, hopefully within those social circles, everyone will have someone they can speak to. But hopefully we can also, as a society, develop that if somebody doesn't have that person in their own natural social circle, that we can create people that are maybe outside external agencies or whatever, that people do feel comfortable to speak to.
And I suppose it's not just about, obviously we're here to support footballers and people who work within football, but it's reflecting that in the community side of things. So if people see others speaking out that they might look up to or be influenced by, that might give them the confidence. You don't know the impact that could have on someone's life.
Yeah, I think social media can have a lot of positives and a lot of negatives, and I think that's been one of the big positives around mental health that I have noticed, that when individuals are speaking up, whether it's about a mental health issue or any other issue that somebody's got in their life, the support network around those people from the social media community, for example, always appears to be really, really strong, and there certainly appears to be a lot of support comes forward and encourages other people to speak up as well. That could be a huge power of social media, I think.
How important do you think it is for charities like Back Onside to be visible within football clubs and available for players in terms of support?
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's really, really important. So we spoke about people's own social circles. We spoke about people within clubs. People always have friends within clubs, but there may be an issue within a football club specifically that a player's just not comfortable talking about one of the peers about, or they don't want to approach the manager, for example, or they don't want to approach somebody in my position, or even whether sometimes they can be friendly with the physios, the masseurs, the kitmen, and maybe at times players just aren't quite comfortable to discuss a certain issue at a given moment with somebody inside the club, and for Back Onside to have somebody that they can speak to outside the club, that maybe even gives them the confidence to then have that chat inside the club, can only be a positive for people.